Let's pick up we left off last time, but at least in some extent to have some background. Okay, we're working on the mitzvah called Mishmoros, and we pointed out the Ramban in the first approach. The Ramban in the first approach, that the Rambam has a mitzvah, two parts of the mitzvah Mishmoros. Certainly in Sefer mitzvahs, the two parts are to make the Mishmoros, and the second part is that on Regel, all the Mishmoros are Shavos. The Ramban, in his first approach, denies that there's a mitzvah to make Mishmoros, but he agrees that there's a mitzvah that at a certain period of time they call Mishmoros Shavos. Okay, he says that that whether it's the regular is the time they call Mishmoros Shavos, or any time that's not sold, he says the Rambam assumes, like the Sefer, that it's only regal, and the Ramban says any time that's not sold there's a mitzvah of kul and shavim. Okay, we say that. So that is the two, the Ramban and the Rambam. Okay, and I think we pointed out that the Rambam Mishnah Torah, a priori, you would learn, as the Ramban does, that it's like the first day of the Ramban, but the Rambam has that the mitzvah is that they should be shaving regel. Biskarov and the Minchas Chinuch assumes the Rambam Mishnah Torah, even though it's not 100% clear. We pointed out the pros and cons of all different approaches, that they assume that the Rambam Mishnah Torah is like the Rambam in Sefer Mitzvahs. Okay, now I think we should pick up the second approach of the Ramban, which is very interesting. The Ramban has three separate tzivuyim, or three separate mitzvahs, which somehow might merge into one or don't merge into one, and has a completely different approach than he has in the first approach. The first part of the three is pretty much the same as what he says in the first approach, that the Kohanim could be oved whenever they wanted, unless there was some type of agreement, levad mimkol v'alavos, between the Kohanim that he would lose his zchuyos at certain time periods. And that is Uboa Levi levad mimkol v'alavos. This mitzvah is in Torah Shebiksav, and it's very clear, levad mimkol v'alavos. And if it's not in the kol ha'avos, they should all be shoving. Okay, so there's nothing new. Okay, the important part is the second mitzvah and the third mitzvah. The second mitzvah, he somehow is ready to agree with the Rambam that is a mitzvah to be machalek l'mishmoros, and mishmoros l'shabbosos, but the important part, first of all, is this is not only Kohanim, this is also Levim. The Rambam, the mitzvah is only by Kohanim. And the Ramban says there's halacha mishmisinai. And what's mentioned in Divrei Hayomim, Aleph, Perich of Dalet. But the Chiddush is that there is a mitzvah b'shmos, not only by Kohanim, but also by Levim. And according to Ramban, in the first shot, mishmos at takona, both by Kohanim and by Levim. So there's a new halacha mishmisinai, not based on any posuk. The Rambam is ready to base it on the psukim. Not say the psukim. We said that there's a posuk in Divrei Yomim. This is Kasher Tziva Hashem es Moshe. Okay, so that is an expression of a tzivui, and I guess the Rambam learned that Kila is a pirush mekubal, that this tzivui is rooted, Kasher Tziva Hashem es Moshe, is rooted in Torah Shebiksav and Torah itself. And it's a pirush in Torah that there's a tzivui to be mechalek. But the Ramban says, no, there's no such thing. It's halacha mishmisina, kasher tziva Hashem es Moshe. I assume he would learn is kasher tziva Hashem es Moshe is halacha mishmisina. There's not in Torah Shebiksav. We don't know. You know, it is true in Divrei Yomim presents a chiluk of Levim and Kohanim, but Pash Kasher Tziva Hashem es Moshe is only referring to the Kohanim. We have to see what the Ramban does. But the Ramban has halacha mishmisinai, and this chiluk of mishmor is both Kohanim and Levim. Now, the third becomes even the third mitzvah. So at the moment, the Rambam and the Ramban are the same halacha l'maisa. There's a mitzvah of chiluk mishmoros, and there's also a mitzvah that in regular everyone should be shoving, or when there's no levad mikol avos. The difference is that according to the Rambam, the mitzvah is only on mishmoros of Kohanim, and according to the Ramban, there's mishmoros of Levim also. Now, the last part, the third aspect, okay, there's a mitzvah of minui of Kohanim and Levim for their peculiar avodas. We know in general in Rambam that the mitzvah that there's an Indian for minui is only on avodas Levim. According to Ramban, it's also on avodas Kohanim. And the minui is kol echad ve'echad lefi hatzara. And this is also mentioned in Divrei Yomim, Aleph, Perek Tes. This is not mishmoros, but an expression of halacha mishmisinai in Divrei Yomim, that there should be minui for Kohanim la'avoidasam and Levim la'avoidasam. So the important issue over here, and this revolves about the whole concept of Shiur Sheni in Minyan HaMitzvos, actually in Sefer Mitzvos. According to the Rambam, Minyan HaMitzvos is a minyan of Torah Shebiksav. or Pirush Makubal, which is entrenched in Torah Shebiksav. According to the Ramban, we have an option of Minyan HaMitzvos, which are pure, unadulterated Torah Shebal Peh. Halacha Moshe Sinai. And the Ramban has this new idea of minui, not only by Levim, but also by Kohanim, which is very similar to the Ravid, who has a Chiyuv Mitzvah Shemayim with a Kohen Sha'avar Avodas Levi. Because he holds as a minui even by Kohen. The Rambam in Ilchos Klei HaMikdash v'Ovdin boy, Perek Gimel, Halacha Yud Aleph, Levim she'ovdu avodas kohanim, o shesia Levi b'melocha she'eno melachtoi chayav misle shemayim shnei lo yamusu. Avol kohen she'over avodas Levi einoi b'misa ela b'lo yisaseh. The Ram Shita is Chiyuv Misa is only by kohanim, not by Levim. Comes the Ravid Om Avrom. V'lo kvar nemo v'lo yamusu gam heim gam atem. Gam heim is Levim, gam atem. The Pasha was said to the Kohanim. So it's a mefush in Torah that is chimis l'shemayim in Kohanim. V'sifri nami hochi dorish lei lo inesh vas ho. So the Ravid and the Ramban learn that there's a chiyuv on Kohen Avodas Levi, because there's also minui by Kohanim, not only by Levim. According to the Rambam, there's only minui by Kohanim and not by Levim. Excuse me. According to the Rambam, there's only, just the opposite. Excuse me. According to the Rambam, there's only a minui by Levim and not by Kohanim. And therefore, if you look, Biskarov talks about this in Chumash at the end of Parshas Bamidbar Barichus, and that the din, the minui, is part of the din of Botei Avos, and the chiluk of Botei Avos of Levim was for peculiar avodas, and in Kohanim it was only for days that they were ovid. And that's why Biskarov learns the Rambam, and the Ramban is not like that. Okay, so this is what we have. Now, next step, okay? What is the parsha talking about? So here, this parsha Chiyuv Levi, l'cheira, there's no issue, both according to the Ram and the Ramban, the parsha is talking about Kohanim. However, there's Halacha Moshe Sinai about Levim and certain things which might not have been a mitzvah according to the Ramban in Kohanim. Even though they mentioned the parsha, you have Halacha Moshe Sinai. So, you know, but the terms of the interpretation, Torah Shebiksav, the parsha is only talking about Kohanim. And there's no machogish Ramban that, what the parsha is talking about. And Chiyuv Levi is referring to a Kohen. And this is a Sifri, and Sheftim Piska Kuf Samuch, and read according to Sachagra, Chiyuv Levi, Yochel ben Levi, V'chulei, V'sheres, B'roi l'sheres, Yotze Levim, Shein Roi l'sheres. So it means that the parsha is talking about Kohanim who are Ovdim in Mikdash, not Levim. In Hilchos Klei HaMikdash v'Ovdim Boi, Perek Dalid Halacha Vov, Uminayin she'enu medaber ela b'kohanim, shenemar chelik v'chelik yochelu. In the Parsha, it talks about Achila. V'yein shom matnes matones b'mikdash lehei ochel. There's only a chiluka legabe achila only b'kohanim, el kohanim b'vad. So therefore, it's very clear that the Parsha is talking about kohanim and not Levim. And the Ramban, as I said, also holds like that in Asogas. Whether there's an added layer with Aloch Sinai, Beseda, but that's not what the Parsha is talking about. So Locheret comes out according to the Sifri, and the Rambam here in Minyan HaMitzvos, and the Rambam Mishnah Torah. The assumption is that a Bo HaLevi, that HaLevi is a Kohen. And the Achila of Chelik or Chelik or Chelu is only by a Kohanim. But the interesting thing is, these psukim, Chazal, Darshin, Legabe Levi, a Gemara in Erkin, Yud Aleph Amud Aleph, Omer Yehuda, Omer Shmuel, Minayin li'ika shira min hatera, Shenema v'sheres b'shem Havaya Elokov, Ezo sheres sheb'shem, b'shem Havaya Elokov, Haviyoyme ze shira. So we're talking about a lady. And the Rambam in Hilchos Klei HaMikdash v'Ovdim Boi, in Perek Gimel Halacha Beis, the Ram quotes this pasuk, "V'yiu mehen mishorin l'shoira harakom b'chol yom, shenema v'sheres b'shem Havaya Elokov, k'chol echov alevim. Ezehu sherus shehu b'shem Havaya, haviyoyme zo shiro." So it comes out that according to the Sifri, and the Rambam in Minyan HaMitzvos, and the Klei HaMikdash in Perek Daled, the Psukim referring to Kohanim. But according to the Gemara in Erchin, and the Rambam in Perek Gimel of Hilchos Klei HaMikdash, the Psukim are talking about Levim. Okay, that's what we have. So, you can say there's a machlekes, but the amazing thing is the Rambam Mishnah Torah accepts both of them. He has a pasuk, this pasuk by Levi in Perek Gimel, and he has it by Kohen in Perek Daled. So how do you do such a thing? So this sounds like, this is a good question. So the one who fields this question is none other than the Smag. The Sefer Mitzvos Gadol in Essen, Simen Kuf Samach Tes, U'lisheire b'chol yom al hakorban, Shenema v'over HaLevi, who es avodas over Levi, who es avodas ol moed, v'goymer v'nema v'sheres b'shem Havaya Elokov. V'hoyu k'chol echov alevim ezer sherus shehu b'shem Havaya, Haviyoyme zo shira v'chule. V'af al pi shebeperek acholil Deresh Parsha zu Bekohanim is still the Gemara. It's not only Sifri, it's the Gemara in Sukkah. Han Deresh Mipishutoi Shel Mikra She'omer Shom V'chiyovo Halevi Me'achad Shorecha V'goyme. So, what he means, even though it's borrowed from the interaction of the Parsha that we're talking about a Kohen, because there's no Achila in Levim. But since the Torah formulates it as Levi, so the Parsha has dinim shenemu b'Levi also. If you remember, this coincides. If you remember, we mentioned that the Rambam says that both the Pshuta Shel Mikra and the Pirush Matike Ashmur came miskayim, as he says by Mizbeach in Mitzvah Chof, that the Pshuta Shel Mikra refers to Bomo and the Kabbalah, it's referring to a Mizbeach Mechubah Mikdash. And there's no stira. Similarly, I guess you can learn that the way Chazal, the way the Matik Yashmur learned, the Parsha is Kula Kayin. But since the Torah says in Pshuta Shel Mikra, Allah Shel Levi, there's also the Parsha refers to Levi. And you can learn that Dini Derais and Levi also. Now, that's the chol we have. It's the chinuch. And he says, since the pasuk of Kiyova Levi is referring to not only Kohanim, but also Levim, the mitzvahs nishmoros was said by Levim. He comes, and I agree, comes like the Ramban, but the Ramban says it as a Pirush, as Alochel Mishmi Sinai. And comes the Chinuch and says it's in the mitzvah from the pasuk. The Sefer Chinuch, mitzvah Tov Kuf, Tes, Shiur HaKohanim v'Halevim. Oivdim b'mikdash l'mishmoros, koyma l'kitos yeduos, v'lo sihiyeh yad hakol misasekes yachad b'avoda, chutz min hayomim mitzvah yom tovim bovad shoy hakol oivdim yachad v'chulei. ועל זה נאמר בחיוב הלוי, ובכלל הלוי הכהן, כי הלוי הויאה בכל השבט. It's not only Levi, but also Kohen, just the opposite. But he includes everyone in the Parsha. The Minchas Chinuch already asks on the Sefer Chinuch that the mitzvah is clearly on the Kohen B'davka, according to the Sifri. But maybe you could say according to the Chinuch, since according to Pshuta Shel Mikra, there's an inyan of Levi, maybe the mitzvah goes on both. Now, interesting is, there's an Aderes Elio, which might reflect this. Aderes Elio from the Goin in Dvorim Yud Ches Halacha Vov V'Chiyova Levi Mamish Kishebo Beregel Mishamish Imsha Echov Halevim. ובספרי, V'chiyov halevi b'koyin hakosim medaber. Shenema v'sheris b'roi v'sheris. So the goyin l'chei a priori doesn't seem to make any sense. He's calling one after the other. So l'chei, what he means is, according to Pshutai, it's a Levi, and the Kabbalah B'Seinu is that it's a koyin, and both are kain. Okay. Now, okay, next. The question is, who is this mitzvah incumbent upon? So, l'chseira, it's an obligation on the community, on the tzibur, to smesada the kohanim, that they should be oived, they should serve in mikdash according to mishmaros. But even if you say it's an obligation of the community tzibur, who is the tzibur? Who represents the tzibur over here? So there are two options. We don't know exactly. You could say that the mitzvah is on the Shevet Kahuna, or you can say on the Manhige Om, on the king or the kohen or the novi or whoever. According to the Pshuta Shel Mikra, Levad Mimekorav ala Ovis, they sold it back and forth. Who can sell? L'chera, the selling was one kohen to another and giving over the schuyos. But the Gemara in Tainis, on Chav Zayin Aleph, says the Chulukah was done by the Manhigei Om. Moshe, Shmuel, and David were Masada the Mishmaros. So it's a little, also, it's confusing. A priori in the Pesukah, you would have said it's one way. It's going on the Kohanim themselves, but the Gemara presents that the ones who did it were the Manhigei Om. Okay. We pointed out, the Ram says here, Tavoid Mishmoris B'chol Shavua, Mishmeris B'chol Shavua, is the Chiluk is in weeks. And I think we pointed out last week also, but the Ramban, and certainly at the end of Derech Rishon, the first approach, is that the Shavua is only a takona, and there could have been any type of group or time block could have been okay. But Ramban, when he gets to the second approach, and he says, Sinai, you get the impression that the Shiur of Shavua is also part of the halacha. V'nimne, he writes, v'nimne mitzasei me'alocha l'Moshe Sinai, shimochu es shvuiseisehem zeh lezeh, ata b'shabbatcha, ani b'shabbati. The interesting thing is, according to Ramban, it's very clear that even the Gemara says that the chiluk was Shmuel and Moshe and David, but the Ramban says that the mitzvah is sinimko, that they should sell to one another, and it's on the Kohanim. Okay. Now, the next is, we spoke a little bit of Mishmoros last week. The Rambam doesn't mention Mishmoros here at all, but he does mention it in Hilchos Klei Mikdash B'Leivnin Boy. In Perek Daled, Alocha Yud Aleph, Kol Reish Mishmor u'Mishmor Mechalek Mishmoroi Lebotei Avos. The administrative head, I don't know how it becomes Reish, of each Mishmor is Mechalek into Botei Avos. Ad Sheyeh Kol Beis Av V'Anoshov Oived B'Yom Echod Mimois HaShabbos V'Acher B'Yom Shalachov. And there's some type of rotation. Each one gets a day. And each group, there's 7, they're groups and they're split up. V'Acher B'Yom Shalachov. So, l'cheira, you would have said that Botei Avos are an administrative chalukah, and it's a separate takana d'Rabbanan or something like that. And you would have assumed that there are no dinim d'Oraisa about it. And that's the way you would have assumed. Why? Because the Divrei Hayomim, which according to the Rambam is the source of Mishmoros, there's no discussion whatsoever about Chalukah Beis Av. The whole discussion is only about Mishmoros. Okay. But however, this is not true. If you remember, we pointed out last week, Derech Agav, I'm not going over this, I'm just going to mention it again. Piskarov is an amazing thing, assumes that Botei Avos are part of the Man Mikol Avos, and there's no difference, which is a major thing, because you don't find that the Rambam ever said that the Mishmoros, there's a deraisa to mechalik it, and it's part of the mitzvah. But there's a different issue. If you are mechalik, is it chal? Is a chal Hashem deraisa? It's only takana. So l'chera, the rai is that it's a chal Hashem deraisa. The Ram in Hilchos Ma'aser Karbonos, Perek Yud Alocha Yud Daled, Avol Inyan Chaluka Hakol Yanshe Beis Av Shemakrivim Beis Hayoim. So the Chaluk is only to the Beis Av. V'kulam Cholkim B'chol Kochem Hamikdash Ish Kochiv. Bein Zeh Shehikriv Bein Echov She'imoi B'Mikdash Shaloi Hikriv. So the source of this din is a Sifra. The Sifra in Pasha Sav, Parsha Hey, at the beginning of Perek Yud Halacha Beis, La Kohen Hamakriv Oisa Lo Tihiyeh Lo Sihiyeh Yochol Lo Levado. Is that the Kohen Hamakriv? Only maybe he should get. Talmudoy Malachol B'nei Aaron Tiyeh Yochol Lekulam. Talmudoy Malachol Hoketzad Ze Beis Av Hamakriv Moisach. So you see in this pasuk and the Sifra, the way the Sifra learns the pasuk, there's a Chal Hashem deraisa for Chalukas Kochim in the Beis Av. Interesting. We have no clue of why it, of under what, what's the mechanism that it works. But we do know that it's a Chal Hashem D'Oraisa. In fact, it comes out. What do we have here? The Kohen HaMakriv is not only the Kohen who is Makriv, b'Metzius, he actually is Makriv, but all of the Kohenei Beis Av are called Kohen HaMakriv. That's what the Sefer says. And this is a Chal Hashem D'Oraisa. That the Kohanim, the other Kohanim in the Mishmah, even though they're also to some extent the Kohen Oiveh, because that's their week, they don't get. You can look at the Chedusha Gam V'Agrid, Hilchos Ma'aseh Korbanos, Perek Yud Halacha Yud Daled, discussing about Beis Av. But even though we don't know the source of it, but once the Cholek, the Botei Av, the Dinei Mishmoros are only on the Beis Av, She'oivim Mikdash on that day, or something like that. Because if you look, and they're Nafkaminas D'Oraisa for this. The Gemara in Yuma, on Vav on the base, the Ram in Hilchos Bias Mikdash, Perek Daled, Halacha Yud Daled, if Tum is Hutim B'Tzibor, if the whole Beis Av is Nitma, and there are other Kohanim in the Mishmah, the same Mishmah, but not the Beis Av or Tahirin, you can let the Kohanim Tmeim be Oived. Lo Mahadrinin al Beis Av Acher, even though they have Tahirim. If Tumu Hutru B'Tzibor lo Matrichin lo Havik Tahirim. No, it's not a dinner based Av, really, because since the Kohan, that was the way the Mechel Chalek, the Kohani based Av are the Kohanim that are in the Mikdash. But the Maisi is, this has a takeif, it has a Chal Hashem D'Oraisa, that he becomes the Kohen Oived. Also, there's a Mishnah in Maseches Tainis, Perek Beis Mishnah Zayin, and the Ram in Hilchos Bias HaMikdash, Perek Aleph Halacha Vav, that only the Anshe Beis Av are Suim in Yayin in both day and night, and not Kohanim of the Beis Av Acher, even though they're in the same Mishmah. Even though this Isa is the Rabbanon, but it's based on the D'Oraisa that Avodah in Mikdash is really to that he's the Kohen HaMakriv. the coin of that base Av. Now, just a side point. Here comes the Rambam and says, Ukfa nisboyer ze b'divrei hayomim eich chokum David u'Shmuel v'som loisam arba'a v'esrim mishmor. So here, if you look in Divrei Hayomim, Aleph, Perich of Dalet, it explains, it tells you of how David was Mechalek the Mishmoros. But Shmuel is not mentioned there at all. But he's only mentioned in a different place, Kulom Habrurim, Lashorim, Besipim, Mosayim, Ushneimos Ohemo, Bechatzreim, Ashmom Hemo Yised David Ushmuel Horeh Be'emunasam. But that's a whole different pair, whole different place. Divrei Hayomim Aleph, Perek Tes, Chosik Chov Beis. And it's not even clear if David and Shlomo worked together, or there were two separate chalukas. And Pasha the Gemara in Tainis, on Chav Zayin, on the Aleph, there are two separate chalukas. Bo Shmuel v'midim al Sheish Esrei, Bo David v'midim al Esrim v'Alba. Meisvei Bo David u'Shmuel v'midim al Esrim v'Alba. Shenema Hemo Yisei David u'Shmuel Horeh be'emunasam. Hochikomo Misoider shel David u'Shmuel Horamosi Hemidum al Esrim v'Alba. Einch, look at the Rashi in the Miri. And I would assume maybe here, and certainly Mishnah Torah, it's mashma they worked together. It was one chalukah. Okay, this claim Shat Ram over here also. Shmuel and David and Shmuel. And it's in Perek Dalid of it was claim English. Even the boy Alocha Gimel, we may Shmuel Chokom Hu v'David Amelech li'Abo v'Esrim Mishmo. It's much clearer, even over here. It seems to be like that in Sefer Hamitzvos. Okay, Beseder. So the question is, why does the Ram quote David and Shmuel? Why doesn't he quote Moshe Rabbeinu, who was the first one who was Mechalek in the Gemara in Tainis and Chav Zayin and Aleph? So that's no kasha at all. Because the Ram is not interested in this history at all. The Ram is interested in the Pesukah of Divrei Hayomim. And Divrei Hayomim say, Kasher Tziva Hashem es Moshe. We don't know that the Chalukah of Moshe was Kasher Tziva Hashem es Moshe. It could be it was his idea. And here we're interested in, is there a mitzvah Chalukah? And we have a raya from David and Shmuel. So again, the Ram learns out that the mitzvah of Chalukah to Mishmoros is from Divrei Hayomim, and that everyone's equal in regel. That is from the Sifri and the Gemara Sukkah. The Sifri. And you see, I'm quoting the Sifri later, and that's to reinforce the Gemara Sukkah that there's a mitzvah that a regular everyone should be shabbat. Now, at the end of this, the Ram quotes the Sifri, Velosh Sifri, Ubor b'chol avas nafshay, Yochol, chol avas nafshay, Yochol yolim tamalim b'yachat sharecha, b'shor she Yisrael mechunosim b'shar echod b'shloshim agolim. Yochol chol b'shmo shavos b'korbanos haregel aboim shalom machmas haregel tamalim levad mekol ha'avos u'ma mochel avos elazeh at shabboscha v'ani b'shabboti. Kloima haskamosam b'seide mishmoros v'avodos mishmoros b'chol shavua. V'chein pirshu hatargum kach mimatarta bar, except bar mimatarta daise shabbato t'chein askino avosom. Now, what does he want from the Targum? So I think the Ram wants, because Stam Targum, Unklis, is a Pirush Makubal. And then it's a riot to Minyan HaMitzvah over here. This is in Pirush Mishnah in Shmona Prokim, in Perek Zayin, V'yoma Metargim, HaMeforesh Ho'inyonim HaMekubalim Moshe Rabbeinu, V'sheres B'ruach Nevuah Al Yak V'sheres Ruach Nevuah Al Yaakov Avud. And this, what the Targum says, is a Pirush Makubal. Similarly over here, I assume that it's a Pirush Makubal. One last point here. There's a Gemara Bava Kama. The Gemara Bava Kama on Kuf Tes Amid Beis. Torah Bonan Minayin L'Koyin Shebo Umakan Kobanaisav B'chol Eis U'B'chol Shah Shiyirtze Talmudoim B'chol Avas Nafshay V'Sheres. So there it says that any kohen could come and do his own avodah at any time, and the Sifri, that's the Gemara Kama, and the Sifri is learning there's a separate din, and anyone kohen can come on regel. So the suggestion should be that the Gemara Bava Kama is a drasha, that the kohen who wants to come to be oimer b'chol avas nafshay, he can come, he takes the all basa, everything. And there's no chalukah of chelik or chelik. And it's nothing to do with the mitzvah, because the mitzvah is when there is chalukah, how the chalukah is. Is the chalukah all the kohanim, or just the kohanim mishma? And here, there's no chalukah at all, according to the Bava Kama. Because the kohen who comes and brings his own korban, who can makiv whenever he wants to come, he gets everything. Okay. Now, that is mitzvah of mishmoros. Now, next mitzvah, let's go back to, I just did mishmoros together. With mitzvah lamed beis, but let's go back now to lamed gimel. Hamitzvah sholish v'shleishim hi shenitztavu hakohanim lilboish begodim miuchodim l'chov v'siforis l'chov v'siforis v'oz yavdu v'mikdash. According to the Rambam, Levish's bigdei kuna is a mitzvah. But the Ramban in Hasogos quotes the Bahag. The Ramban himself is not misalik this mitzvahs, but the Bahag doesn't have such a mitzvah. And he's referring to the Bahag. It's the dato of the Bahag that's not moine, who's not moine. Levish's bigdei kuna is a mitzvah. Zeus loimal shtekiv de ebe levishu abegodim shaloi b'shaso avoida shum mitzvah eino ela hechsha. It's only b'shas avoida, and it's machsha the koyin for avoida. V'hine hu v'chulei hine hu chelek mi mitzvah avoida im ovad bohen ukva nizboye sheyud beis she'ein monich chelkei mitzvahs. So l'cheira over here, there are two tainas in the Bahag. Of the way the Ramban is quoting the Bahag, there are two tainas against the Rambam. One taina is Sheres Yud, the Yirat Moina Hakdomos, and the Levish's bigdei kuna is a Hakdoma to the mitzvah. Another approach is that it's not a Hakdoma, it's not a Hakdoma. But it's like Shoreshid Beis. It's Chelkei mitzvah. The mitzvah is put on begodim and do this and do the avodah. So you don't count the avodah, the levisha and the avodah as two separate mitzvahs. You count the levisha as part of the avodah. According to the first shot, you don't count levisha at all. It's only aksha. It's like afiz lechem aponim. Or making, or bringing lekichas shemen lamo for a menorah. According to second pshat, it is a mitzvah, but it's not a separate mitzvah. So it's a very interesting thing, l'cheira, and we know since the Ramban is not misalik this mitzvah for minyan mitzvahs in his at the end of minyan mitzvahs, we know the Ramban, even though he takes the cause of the Bahag, he wasn't passing like the Bahag. He passes the mitzvah of Vish's bigdei kuna. The Ram quotes over here l'chov v'siforis. What does he want with it? So maybe Gufa, he wants to bring a raya against the Bahag. Because if the mitzvah is only a hechsher, the whole idea of the Kol Seforis is not necessary. Because the kiyum of Levishin mikdash and Kol Seforis. And the Rambam moitz more in the Vuchim. There's an inyan miyucha l'chol seforis to be magdil the mishnahs lefaroi. The Rambam more in the Vuchim Chele Gimel Perek Memhei Hamitzvos asher kol aloisom haklal asiri heim asher sofalnu behilchos beis habechira vehilchos klei hamikdash ve'oivdim boy. V'hilchos bias hamikdash v'chulei umechlal hadvorim meviim lahagdil hamikdash lefaroi. What brings lahagdil hamikdash lefaroi? Ad shegilu lanu yira mimenu. That's one. Is yiras hamikdash v'chulei. It's two. V'tzivo lahalbish hakohanim begodim noim umalbushim yofim v'toivim bigdei kodesh l'chovel seferes. The kim l'chovel seferes in mikdash. L'chayra, that is what the Rambam has. You should only ask a question. Leif Sameach, you see, also learns like this in Aseh Lamed Gimel. Is the question you should ask. The Kohanim had yotes, according to the Rambam, are also to wear big dekuna shlebish asavoida because the east of shatness. So one would have said that the kiyum b'levi shosam is not a kiyum of Tiferes HaMikdash, but it's a din in avoida like the Bahag. So you have to say, according to the Rambam, that only b'shas avoida this covers the Tiferes HaMikdash, a very strange thing. Because only b'shas avoida the Kohanim HaMikdash, and the Kohanim HaMikdash are the chovos Tiferes HaMikdash. So that's what he's saying. Okay. The rayas to this, but I think we should pick them up because I'm not going to finish it, I don't think. Mit Hashem will pick up the rayas next week. Bli neder.